when I dropped out of school. It wasn't easy to find work. Nobody seemed to want to hire a girl with no qualifications. I was tired of applying for jobs advertised in newspapers and on the internet without receiving any replies. One day I spotted an ad for a job that was not so tempting, but I really needed the money. The ad said they were looking for a live-in babysitter to take care of 3 young children. It said no qualifications were necessary. They just required someone young, responsible, and pretty. I called the number, and the phone was answered by a woman with a sweet and friendly voice. When I told her I was calling about the babysitting job, she hired me on the spot. She didn't even want to meet me in person first, but she said she needed me to start immediately. I was delighted. The next morning, I drove over to the house to meet the family. As soon as I got there, I saw that the house was beautiful both inside and out. You could tell that the family was wealthy. The woman and her husband greeted me with broad smiles on their faces and introduced me to their children. There were 2 boys and a girl. Sebastian was 6 years old, Damien was 5, and Lenka was 4. The kids seemed to be nice, happy, and friendly. They were always polite, never fought with each other, and never made a mess. All they did was play alone or read a book. The parents announced that they were going out to dinner and wouldn't be home until late that night. They told me the children had already been fed, so all I had to do was get them ready for bed. The mother gave me a phone number and told me to call her if there was an emergency. The father told me to make myself at home, and if I was hungry, he said I could take whatever I wanted from the refrigerator. After their parents left, the children sat down on the sofa to watch TV. They were very quiet and barely said a word. During a commercial, I was feeling a bit hungry, so I went into the kitchen to make myself a snack. As I was rummaging around in the refrigerator, I couldn't help but notice 2 large jars that were stuffed in the back of the fridge. Both of them were wrapped in plain brown paper and had a rubber band sealing the rim. I wondered what on earth could be in them. My curiosity got the better of me, so I took out one of the jars and peeled back the brown wrapper to take a little peek. It was full of long strips of fatty meat floating in a murky red liquid. I couldn't tell what kind of meat it was, but it didn't look like pork or beef. Just as I was about to put the jar back where I found it, I heard a noise behind me. It startled me so much, I banged my head on the shelf above me. When I turned around, Sebastian was standing in the doorway staring at me. "Put that back," he said. "That's not for you." The look on his eyes and the tone of his voice sent chills down my spine. "Sorry," I muttered. "I was just looking for something to eat." Sebastian didn't reply. He just stood there, staring at me. I placed the jar back in the refrigerator and shut the door. Sebastian turned around and went back to the living room. I lost my appetite, so I went and joined the children in the living room and watched cartoons with them. I was trying to not let my imagination get the better of me when the cartoons finished and the news came on. There was a story about a teenage girl who had gone missing. The police found her decomposing head in a dumpster. They said they had no idea what had happened to the rest of her. I was afraid the grisly news story would upset the children, so I changed the channel and told them it was time for bed. The kids didn't complain. They just walked up the stairs in single file and went to their bedroom. I put them in their pajamas and got them ready for bed. Then I tucked them in, kissed them all goodnight, and switched out the lights. When I came back down, I was bored and had absolutely nothing to do, so I decided to watch a movie. I looked through the family's DVD collection, but all they had were cartoons and Disney movies. I wasn't in the mood for any more kids' stuff. On the bottom shelf, I spotted some old VHS tapes. One of them had a strange title. It was M-Girls. This seemed rather curious, so I decided to take a look at it. I put the videotape in the VCR and pressed play, then sat down on the sofa and made myself comfortable while the video started. The first thing I noticed was that it was a home video. The family must have recorded it themselves. The parents and children were all laughing and looking like they were having fun. I was about to turn it off when I happened to notice someone else in the video. It was a girl who looked like she was in her late teens. It seemed like she was the previous babysitter. She looked very familiar. It seemed like I recognized her from somewhere. Perhaps she went to my school? Then it finally hit me. Oh my freaking God! It was the missing girl from the news report. My hands were shaking. My whole body was trembling. I just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I jumped out of my seat, ejected the video, and put it back in its case. Then I remembered the jars in the refrigerator. I had to see what was in those jars. With a shudder, I went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Maybe I'm just overreacting, I thought. I reached and took out the second jar, peeled back the brown paper wrapper. I could see long pale hunks of meat and strips of fat floating in the red liquid. Some of the meat looked like it had skin on it. Human skin. I could also see what looked like strands of hair. Long hair. Human hair. I was so scared. I felt like I was about to pee my pants. I ripped off the rubber band that was sealing the jars and peered inside. There was an eyeball staring back at me. Horrified, I dropped the jar and it smashed on the kitchen floor. I ran to the living room, put on my jacket, grabbed the videotape and stuffed it into my pocket. When I came out of the hallway, Sebastian was standing at the foot of the stairs. "Where are you going?" he asked. I just remembered," I stammered. "I forgot something. I have to go home and get it. I'll be back in a few minutes." Damien and Lenka came running down the stairs. "You can't go," screeched Damien. "You can't leave us on our own." "I'm calling our parents," shouted Lenka as she picked up the phone and began dialing numbers. Sebastian grabbed hold of my leg and wouldn't let go. "You have to stay," he squealed. "We're hungry." His grip was extremely tight, but I managed to shake him off and ran out the front door. As I dashed to my car, I saw the parents pulling into the driveway. I didn't stop for a moment. I just jumped into my car and locked all the doors. The children were on the doorstep screaming and crying. The mother and father got out of their car and they came running over. There was an angry look on their faces. "What's wrong?" they shouted. "Where are you going? Come back here!" I didn't answer. I just turned the key in the ignition and revved the engine. They started banging on the windows. I floored the accelerator and tore out of there like a bat out of hell and never looked back. I didn't stop until I came to the police station. I told the police officers everything I knew and handed over the videotape as evidence. The police immediately dispatched 2 patrol cars. By the time they arrived at the house, the parents and children were gone. They just took their car and disappeared. The police searched the house and found the jars in the refrigerator. They also found human flesh and bones in the basement. They did tests and confirmed that these were the remains of the missing girl. They never managed to track down the parents of the children. They're still out there somewhere. Probably living under a different name. Probably still on the hunt for new victims. If you want my advice, be careful who you are babysitting for. This happened when I was with my girlfriend and we were out on a vacation trip. We had booked a winter lodge in a remote tundra forest to enjoy the chilly winters in a classic wooden cabin. We tried hard to find a place, but most of them were shared resorts or too expensive. But my girlfriend Jenny had found a place online which fitted exactly with our budget, and it did not have any fancy gimmick. It was just a nice little cabin in the woods. After reaching the site, I was more than happy to see it. It was a very secluded place and a cute little wooden cabin with a small fireplace. The only thing that stood out as odd was the proprietor of the cabin. He didn't seem like a bad guy, but he was incredibly awkward. We didn't mind though. We figured since we lived so far away from people, we might just not be used to it. Jenny and I unwinded sitting in the lounge with hot chocolate in her hands. It was the perfect winter getaway. The only downfall was there was no signal or network. Everything was going smooth. Until night, when we went to bed. I heard strange rattling noises outside, and I went out to check it out. It was already past 3 a.m. in the morning, and Jenny was fast asleep. As I checked out, I was horrified at what I had seen. I saw a dead and mutilated moose just beside the cabin. I feared if the proprietor had hunted it and thought of asking in the morning, but as I turned around, I heard Jenny scream. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could, only to find out she was not in the bed and the window was rolled up. My heart stopped beating for a second when I saw a trail of blood leading to the window, and I quickly followed it. As I did, I felt a hand push me down into the snow. My feet instantly went numb, but I found my footing and saw Jenny crying and lying down on the snow in a pool of blood. As I turned around, I saw the proprietor holding a bloodied axe with his eyes gouging out and his beard and arms drenched in blood with snow alike. My hand struggled to find something to defend him, but all it could was grab the snow. He came out from the window and tried to swing his axe at me with a roaring voice, but I managed to escape. I then escaped into the woods and managed to lose him in there, and quickly returned to pick up Jenny and went the other direction. We walked for miles until we found a round and sought help. When the police arrived, they didn't quite believe me, saying that the cabin had been abandoned for years since an old man who used to live there went mad and killed his child with an axe. I was in shock and went with them to check the place out. The only thing that was there was the dead moose. The cabin was empty. I didn't know what happened, but no one believed us. My name is Dexter Dillon. I'm 22 years old. A few months ago, I went to a heavy metal music festival. There, I was fortunate enough to meet an awesome girl. She was about my age. Her name was Claudia. We got along very well and had a great time. Plus the fact that she was beautiful, it didn't hurt either. Claudia had the most amazing long dark curly hair. She was dressed in black and her big green eyes were stunning. So after the music festival was over, we exchanged contacts and decided that we wanted to keep seeing each other. For the moment, we were just friends. But I have to admit I was hoping for something more in the future. And indeed, I was definitely going to be experiencing something more. Careful for what you wish for. Luckily enough, Claudia didn't live that far away from me. Just 1 hour of distance by car, when she invited me to have dinner at her place. I was happy and excited. It was late October, so Halloween season was already showing itself, with skeletons, witches, and pumpkins placed outside some of the houses. Plus, that particular night when I was driving to Claudia's place, it was raining. So the mood was really perfect for us to watch some horror movies. As I finally arrived, I parked the car in front of Claudia's garage, and she said I should. It was 9:30, a Sunday night. Young people. Yeah, we like to eat at late hours. I got out of the car and I called Claudia. She wasn't answering her cell phone, but I could hear it ringing inside her house, although the lights were out. I tried a couple more times. No answer. But again, I could listen to the cell phone ringing. I thought Claudia was making a fool out of me. Some kind of early Halloween prank? So I decided to play along. I got closer to Claudia's house. The front door was locked, but I circled around the house trying to find the back door. Bingo! There it was, and it was unlocked. I entered Claudia's house through the back door. I was inside the kitchen. I switched the lights on. Come out, wherever you are," I said. Eventually, I entered the living room. Again, I switched the lights on. I saw Claudia lying behind the couch. I started to laugh. "Is that the best you can do, Claudia? I can see you, lying on your back. Your hair gave you up immediately." But she wasn't answering. I approached her. When I touched her, I realized there was blood all over her dark clothes. The blood was now on me. I turned her over and I screamed. Claudia's throat had been cut, slaughtered. Her big green eyes were still open, but now completely lifeless, although still revealing the fear and terror that she must have felt when being murdered. The last moments of her life. As for me, I started feeling dizzy. As I looked at Claudia's dead body, her clothes and face filled with blood. My head was spinning around. My brain went into shock, and I fainted. I passed out completely. The surprise was even bigger when I woke up. I wasn't in the same room. There was someone dead in front of me. Still. But it wasn't Claudia anymore. It was a man in his early 40s, bald, fat, with a long beard. What is happening here? I thought to myself. As an answer, I realized I was holding a bloody knife in my right hand. The man's neck had also been slashed. By me. I was covered in this strange man's blood, and I had no idea what was going on. No memory whatsoever. Trying to remain happy, I explored the place where I was. It was some kind of cottage, a small wooden house. It was surrounded by woods. For some odd reason, my car was outside the cottage. Fortunately, thanks to my GPS, I was able to determine where I was. I didn't report the dead man to the police. I didn't even report Claudia's death. I was afraid I was going to be arrested, and the police would never believe my words. I don't remember anything. Probably the oldest excuse in the book. I went back home and burned my clothes. I washed the knife with bleach so there would be no traces of blood or fingerprints rather than my own. I thought it was better than to throw it away. It was safer to keep it with me instead of taking the chance of someone finding it. In any case, a few days later, the police came to my house. Claudia's dead body had been found, and of course, I was on her cell phone's contact list. I lied, saying I went there, as expected, but she didn't answer her door or her cell phone, so I left and returned home. It's not the first time a woman had second thoughts about being with me, so I didn't think it was such a big deal. That's what I told the police. But I didn't remember that I left my fingerprints all over Claudia's house. I became a suspect. I was called in by the police for a second interrogation. The night before I was supposed to go, I fell asleep, nervous and terrified. I had no idea what was going on, and I could go to jail if the police didn't believe me. When I woke up, it was the middle of the night. Once again, I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I wasn't in my own house this time. I was lying on the floor in a darkened room. The floor was wet. I got up trying to find a switch to turn on some kind of light. Finally, I found it. Now I could see. I could see I was inside a gloomy and stinky garage. I could see something else. Inside the garage, there were shelves, and the shelves were filled with heads of young dead girls. And on the floor, there it was, another dead man. Also in his early 40s like the other. He actually looked a lot like the previous one, except for the beard. They could be twins. This dead man's throat had been cut open like the other one, just like Claudia's. And on the floor next to this man, another knife. I couldn't take it anymore. Screaming, I called the police. Someone, please, tell me what is going on. I don't mind going to jail. I just need to understand what is wrong with me. The police traced the call and came to me. I was placed under arrest. On my first night sleeping in my cell, Claudia herself came to me in my dreams. And she said, "Hello, Dexter. I'm sorry, but when you came to my house, my spirit was still trapped and filled with anger. I entered your body, and I took control of you. I used you to kill my 2 murderers. Thank you. Now I'm free." When I woke up, I told what happened to the police. Of course, no one believed me. How could they? Even if they would, the physical evidence would say otherwise. Claudia's spirit is now free and avenged. But as for me, I'm going to jail for a long, long time.